Hey folks, welcome back to Icon Designs. I've been using my CNC routinely for about 8 months, and in that time I've learned a ton about how they operate. So in today's video, I'm going to be taking those learnings and completely redesigning my Spoilboard. In addition to that, I'll be upgrading from a 2.5-inch dust collection system to a 4-inch dust collection system. Now I'm also excited to announce that my small channel has just hit 5,000 subscribers, which is huge for me, and to celebrate I'll be giving away this cutting board, so stay tuned for the details. So let's jump right into this. I'm going to start off by removing the existing dust collection on my CNC, and I'm going to remove the Spoilboard. Now if you've watched my channel recently, you know that I've just upgraded my dust collector to a 3 horsepower Cyclone dust collector. And that got me thinking about whether or not the 2.5-inch dust collection apparatus that I have on my CNC will provide enough airflow to the dust collector to maintain the cyclone vortex inside of the dust collector. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to increase the capacity of my dust collection for my CNC. And while I'm at it, I can do a few upgrades like the Spoilboard that we talked about. So using the power of video editing, I instantly removed the 80 screws holding down the Spoilboard and the T-track. And while I've got clear, unobstructed access to the router, I decided to wipe off any excess dust with a microfiber towel and get rid of any dust buildup that you can sometimes get near the bearings. I then proceed to disassemble the rest of my CNC dust collection. Most of this stuff is either friction fit or held on by a series of zip ties. Next up, I turn my attention to the Spoilboard. Now I'll be cutting 5 panels for the Spoilboard rather than the 3 larger panels that I used in my original design. This will allow me to run 2 additional tracks of T-track in my Spoilboard and give me more clamping options whenever I'm trying to secure my CNC projects on the Spoilboard. I also want to mention how happy I am with my new Cyclone dust collector. I recently upgraded this from a single stage system, and after cutting all that MDF, there was almost no dust left in the bag below the filter. Almost everything was captured through the actual Cyclone portion of the filter itself. And in a recent video, I went through the details of how that works and what fundamentals of physics are at play. So I'll leave a link to that in the description below if you want to have a look at it. Next, I use a square and a 4-foot level to strike 5 lines across the MDF panels. This will help me better align the pre-drilled holes in the next step and just produces a better final product. Once each of the pilot holes have been drilled, I pick up a larger bit that I will use for countersinking. I'd make a measurement about 2/3 of the way through the MDF material and use some painter's tape as a guide. It's important to countersink these screws because you want to keep the screw head well below the surface of the Spoilboard so your CNC bits never come in contact with it. You also want to leave space for the Spoilboard to be resurfaced a few times before you have to replace the MDF panels. Once all the holes are drilled, I use a bit of painter's tape on the ends of my 2 new T-tracks and take it over to the miter saw to make the cuts. This T-track is made from a softer aluminum, and it's generally fine to use with a carbide tip saw if you take it slow enough. One tip I'll be using to install the Spoilboard in the correct spot is to put a fine-tipped CNC bit on the end of my router, and then use the CNC itself to find the exact point where the corner of the Spoilboard needs to be installed. Once the board's in the right position, I install 1 screw to secure it as a pivot point, and then move the router to the back edge of the table and repeat the process to position the other end of the Spoilboard. Once the board's in position, I use screws to secure it to the table, and then just like dominoes, everything kind of falls in line after you've got that one piece, and I just work my way from left to right. Now the Spoilboard is secure and I've got a lot more clamping options. But one problem that you'll recognize is that even though the Spoilboard is securely fastened, it is not level. There could be a number of reasons for that, and it doesn't really matter. The important thing is that we take the additional step to flatten the spoil board so that it is exactly parallel to the axis of the CNC itself. But before we can do that, we first have to assemble and install the new 4-inch dust collection boot on the CNC and run a 4-inch dust collection line back to the dust collector. This particular dust collection boot is version 7 of the design. I'll leave a link to the website where I got this in the description below. But one thing I liked about the design is there's a magnetic coupling which you can use to quickly connect or disconnect the 4-inch dust collection hose to your CNC dust boot. And I'll get more into that in just a little bit. The creator of this particular design also has a helpful instructional video on YouTube. So as you're putting it together using a combination of CA glue and screws, you can follow along in the process as he's putting it together with you. The assembly process only took about 10 or 15 minutes and was pretty easy. In addition to the magnetic coupling, which I talked about earlier, magnets are also used on the base of the dust boot. This allows you to remove and attach the brush track or the 2-inch bristles easily, which is helpful when doing a bit change out. This dust boot is designed to fit around the collar of the router, and then it's held in place by a quick connect clamp that's a part of the dust boot itself. One thing worth highlighting about this design is that the dust boot itself does stick out about 6 inches beyond the Y rail, so take that into consideration if you have an enclosure. Next, it's time to run the 4-inch dust collection line back to the dust collector, but first I have to decide where I'm going to locate the exit of the enclosure with the 4-inch line. I pick a spot on the top of the enclosure and then do a quick check to make sure that the hose has no issues reaching each corner of the CNC area. I then mark where the exit flange is going to be installed. On the top side, I'm going to be installing a exit flange that has a 90 built into it that's going to transition into flex hose to get to my dust collection run back to the dust collector. That's held in place by 4 screws in each of the corners. On the inside of the enclosure, there's going to be a similar flange, but I'll be rotating it 45 degrees to make sure there's no interference in the screws through the thin plywood. So I grabbed a handful of screws that I was using to install the T-track and installed it with the drill, and then this happened. I clearly was not paying attention, so I had to shamefully back out that screw, and then I replaced it with one with a broader head. But let's move beyond that, okay? Let's get over that embarrassment. Let's talk about something exciting, like how you can enter to win that cutting board that we talked about earlier in the video. Entering is very simple. All you have to do is start your comment below with the word enter, and there's 4 rules of the giveaway. You have to be a subscriber to win. I'm going to be picking the winner of March 31st of 2022, and the winner will have the cutting board shipped free of charge. The only restriction is that this is only open to folks that live in countries where this type of giveaway is legal. Now, I recently did a giveaway on a brick pattern cutting board video that I did, and RJ Woodworks was the winner of that board, and here's an Instagram post that he made. So this is real. It's not like I'm going to be one of those, we've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty thing. Like, this is a legit thing. It's just a way for me to try to connect with my audience and show my thanks for all the support that I've been getting in growing my small YouTube channel. So leave a comment down below if you want to enter. Okay, back to the video. Once I had the 90 installed on top of the CNC enclosure, the rest of the 4-inch run going back to the dust collector came together really quickly. I decided to install the blast gate closer to the dust collector itself, since that would be pretty awkward to get to on top of the CNC enclosure, and that seems to be working pretty well. I then fired up the dust collector to take this for a test run, and just to do a quick range of motion check to ensure that this new dust collection system within the CNC can still reach all 4 corners of the cuttable area. And as I was moving it to the bottom right hand corner, this happened. I mean, how satisfying is that? You gotta celebrate the small victories, right? Okay, now with a working dust collection system within my CNC enclosure, I can now go back and surface the spoil board that we were working on earlier. I'll be using a white side 6210 1-inch surfacing bit to do this, and I only had to remove 5/100ths of an inch to make this completely flat. Now you just want to make sure that you removed a little bit of material from each section of the spoil board so that it's completely parallel to the axis of your CNC. Now that the spoil board is flat, I'm going to take an additional step that I didn't do in my original design of my spoil board, and that is to install 1-inch grid lines throughout the entire cuttable area of the CNC. This is not really for a measurement standpoint, but rather to help align your piece on the spoil board to align with your X and Y axis to ensure that it's properly oriented before you start cutting on it. I've had a few CNC projects in the past that weren't aligned perfectly, and this should help fix that. Now, I was ready to call this project good at this point, but I thought of one more idea that would help increase the functionality of this new dust collection system. So I decided to remove the hard clamp that was on the end of my dust collection hose and install a magnetic coupling so that there could be a magnetic quick disconnect anytime I wanted to remove the 4-inch dust collection hose from my CNC. There's times where I don't want to have the hose inside the enclosure for various reasons, and this allows me to quickly remove it and reattach it without having to fiddle with any screw down hose clamps. All right, that's going to be it for this video. Really appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Remember, if you want to enter for the cutting board giveaway, start your comment below with the word enter. And if you're looking for a way to support me, leave a like, subscribe to my channel. It's free and it helps out a lot. See you on the next one.